Today is August 26, 2023. Today we've got a really special aspect happening in the sky where the Sun in Virgo is making an opposition to Saturn retrograde. And so I wanted to read a little bit from Cafe Astrology just on the significations of that particular aspect. Sun opposite Saturn. Those people born under a challenging aspect between the Sun and Saturn face a fair number of challenges in their lives, especially in the first half of life, in which their attempts to express their will are thwarted. There can be a persistent feeling that they don't get what they want more often than other people around them. They can feel unlucky. Attempts to control their environment and sometimes others may be frequent. These people fear their own feelings of inadequacy. They want to be considered accomplished and important people. And when they face obstacles, they don't always want to believe that they are their own worst enemy. They long to be considered important in the eyes of the world, yet they harbor fear of success at the same time. They take failures and minor setbacks to heart, and some practically beat themselves up over them. Self-awareness to the point of real self-consciousness is characteristic of Sun-Saturn challenging aspects. The truth is, nobody holds a microscope over them except for themselves. A little setback or faux pas needn't be analyzed to death. Fingers needn't be pointed. No, they didn't make a spectacle of themselves when they made a mistake. They need to stop worrying about always being right or appearing suave and accomplished. When they ease the pressure they put on themselves, they find that they don't face as many brick walls. It is very much about what they feel they deserve. Deep down inside, if they let themselves truly believe that they deserve happiness and peace of mind, they will find it. When Saturn is closely connected to a personal planet, there is usually an effect of censoring going on with whatever is ruled by the planet it joins by aspect. For example, with the moon, which rules emotions, the natives feel the need to censor their emotions and feelings, scanning them for what is thought to be frivolous. With Saturn and the Sun, there is much self-censoring going on. I shouldn't is a common censoring mechanism with these people. They feel they shouldn't want too much. When they express egotism of any form, some part of them feels guilty. As the Sun rules our conscious mind, it does enough censoring on its own. It is the adult within us. Saturn, on the other hand, is more like the parent within us. We need parents to guide us when we are children and to some degree as adults, but for the most part, we don't need to be censored indefinitely, something that seems to be the case with Saturn-Sun hard aspects, except that the censoring in parenting is coming from within. Ideally, these people eventually learn that the standards they set for themselves are too high, and that may be the reason they seem to hit brick walls. They recognize that many of the restrictions they face in life are often self-created, born of a defeatist attitude. They should be aware of the tendency to choose the hardest paths to travel and/or to deny themselves some of life's pleasures. Working on recognizing and managing these tendencies will help them to avoid pitfalls of this combination. These people have a sarcastic sense of humor, a keen intelligence, and the ability to apply caution and strategy. The vitality may suffer and troubles with bones, teeth, and circulation may surface. So one quick note about Sun-Saturn aspects is that this is a very, very difficult aspect. Anytime you have Saturn making a hard aspect to any one of your personal planets, and when we talk about hard aspects with Saturn, we are particularly looking at the opposition, the square, and even the conjunction. Saturn has the psychological characteristic of limiting reality in certain fundamental ways. And so it limits the expansion, it limits progress, it forces you to kind of go down and within. And there are a couple of ways to work with Saturn energy, and this is why knowing astrology is absolutely critical for the self-healing process. If you know these things about yourself, then you can work with these aspects of your own psyche in different ways, in more productive ways. So what you see written in these traditional forums like Cafe Astrology is, hey, don't beat yourself up too much. And if you tell somebody with a hard Saturn aspect that, it just flies right over their head. It's just like, shut up. The people from the outside who are saying that to a Saturnian individual, what they don't understand is that these are hardwired realities. So people with hard Saturn aspects in their chart are hardwired to perceive reality in these very difficult ways. They are fundamentally internally constricted, and therefore they reflect that in the outer forms of the reality around them. The best thing that you can do when you have hard Sun-Saturn aspects is to really cultivate your own Saturnian energy, and then really cultivate the energy of the other planets that it aspects as well. So cultivating Saturnian energy looks like really diving into discipline, yogic practices like hatha yoga, where there is a sense of constriction and then release. When you do that with the physical body, there is a karmic release of that energy in your own mind psychologically. Say, for example, you have a Sun Saturn aspect, and every morning you wake up and you do an hour-long hatha yoga practice where you practice these binding and constricting postures, and then you allow your body to open and release. And you do that with repetition. And it doesn't matter if you pay for a hatha yoga class or if you do these strict postures on your own. Saturn just has to feel a sense of binding and discipline, and in order to release that energy, it has to be experienced. This is one thing about all of the planets, that in order to release that energy and let it be lived out in the world, it has to be experienced in the body, in the mind, in the heart, and the soul. And so by doing these physical practices of like constricting the body and then releasing, then you are at the same time simultaneously activating that part of your psyche where you're saying, I recognize you, brain. I see that you need that sense of constriction and control. I'm doing that with my physical body, and then I am releasing it. So today, Sun is making an opposition to Saturn, and I looked up some charts online to see if I could find a celebrity with a similar energy, and the one that I found was actually Charlie Sheen. Charlie Sheen has the same setup that we've got happening right now. He's got the Sun in Virgo opposing Saturn in Pisces, and his Saturn is actually retrograde in Pisces. And so when we have Saturn retrograde in the sign of Pisces, that can be a signature of a person who gets more into drugs and alcohol, especially when it's opposing the Sun. And remember that whatever the Sun aspects in your chart is what you often become known for. So when your Sun is aspected by Saturn in an opposition, you become known as a person who has had to tango with the hard realities of life, and you've been pulled down into the mud by your own choices and decisions and your own, in this case, your own self-undoing, because it's in the sign of Pisces. Like your drinking and your drugs and your sex and your escapist habits have unraveled you as a person, and therefore had a very negative reflection on your identity from the Saturn to the Sun. And so one of the things that Charlie Sheen is known for is that very difficult Saturnian hard time that he has fallen on. Charlie Sheen is a perfect example of a person who has not utilized Saturnian energy well. Saturnian energy is not meant to keep you down. It's not just meant to be a restrictive, limiting force in your life that keeps its thumb on you and keeps you oppressed. What is meant to happen with Saturnian energy is you are meant to develop your own sense of internal authority and self-discipline, and you are meant to learn how to restrict yourself. And if you don't do that, if you allow yourself to just run amok and not put the necessary limitations and restrictions and boundaries around your own life, then you end up like Charlie Sheen, who has run amok, who has ruined his career, ruined so many relationships. He has contracted HIV as a result of his party days, and just absolutely torn up his body. He's probably going to realize at some point that had he been a lot more disciplined with his energy, he could have done amazing things. He could have done very important, very noteworthy, big things in the world without being so destructive. But, this is one of the ways that Sun opposite Saturn plays out. So that is my interpretation of the Sun and Saturn aspect for today. The best way to make use of this energy is to recite mantras and do general postures of constriction and expansion. So the mantra for the Sun is Om Suryaya Namaha. And when you do the Sun mantra, I would recommend opening your throat, opening your arms, looking up, any type of posture that has to do with opening the heart and the chest. And whenever you do Saturn mantras, the mantra for that is Om Sri Shanayeshwaraya Swaha. And so when you do that, I would recommend, this is the one that I've found to be most effective, put your body more in the fetal position with your forehead on the ground, recite the mantra, and then come up in a prayer position, and then stand up and go into your Sun mantra. So you're going from Om Suryaya Namaha to Om Sri Shanayeshwaraya Swaha. Om Suryaya Namaha, Om Sri Shanayeshwaraya Swaha. So like over and over again, and you can recite that as many times as you need in order to just cycle this energy through your mind. So if this ends up being a hard day for you at all whatsoever, if you're beating yourself up over the constrictions of your reality, then get into these mantras, get into the restriction and expansion contradiction movements, and that should help. Okay, that's all I have to say for this one, and I will see you later.